Chapter 8. The Cottage. Alex woke up in a grassy field the next afternoon. She looked around and grunted to herself. She had been riding her bike all night and had just stopped to rest a moment off the road. Clearly, the moment had lasted a few hours longer than she planned. She was in the foothills leading up to the mountains where her grandmother's cottage was. It had been a great while since the last time she and her brother had gone. It was difficult remembering the exact directions. As the foothills slowly rose into the mountain terrain, she stopped at a tiny gas station and purchased a map. Navigating became harder as the roads wound and forked up into the mountains. She glanced back and forth at the map as she continued, making sure she was traveling northeast. She remembered her parents used to drive northeast until there was no more roads to take. Alex felt guilty for leaving her brother at home, but had wanted to drag him into her spontaneous plan. Although when the night fell and Alex was forced to set up a small camp off the road by herself, she really wished her brother was there keeping her company. She couldn't make up her mind if it was more dangerous to be traveling to the woods in the fairy tale world or her world. Even though there were no big bad wolves to be worried about, she was sure there were still regular wolves around. But she couldn't handle a simple wolf now. How was she going to take down a powerful enchantress when she found her? She doubted swinging a big stick would scare off the one who cursed an entire kingdom for 100 years. The more she thought about it, the less it made sense. What did this Ismia woman want with her mother anyway? How did she even get her mom in the first place? If the fairies couldn't find her or her mother, what made Alex think she could? Alex and her brother knew more about the Enchantress the others gave them credit for. During their encounter with the evil queen, they discovered that the Enchantress did kidnap the evil queen when she was a girl, and used her in a scheme to take over the fairy tale world. Alex lay on the ground, using her backpack as a pillow, and let her troubled thoughts wander until she finally fell asleep. Alex was back on her bike before sunrise the next day. She biked across windy road after windy road until the middle of the afternoon. She jolted forward and almost fell off her bike when her front tire hit a particularly sharp rock and went flat. "You gotta be kidding me," Alex said, and angrily tossed her useless bike into the side of the road. She would have to travel by foot for the rest of the journey, however long that would be. Her spirits rose an hour or so after when she saw a wooden bridge in the road ahead. When Alex and Connor were younger, seeing this bridge meant they were almost at their grandmother's house. Alex knew she was close. She jogged toward the bridge in relief, but the closer she got, the less familiar it appeared. It seemed so small compared to the one in her memories. Was it just because she was much smaller then? Also disheartening as was how decrepit the bridge appeared to be. Every piece of wood was chipped and rotting like crazy. Alex took a couple steps into the bridge and examined it closer. It didn't feel right. A car would never fit onto the bridge. She looked over the side. Several hundred feet below was dry and rocky riverbed. The bridge her family used to drive over was only a few feet higher than the stream that ran under it. Alex sighed. She was lost. She turned on her heels and started to head back when she heard a sudden crack. Before she could tell the sound was coming from, Alex fell straight through the bridge, rotting, splitting wood under her feet. She screamed and grabbed the wood of the bridge. She desperately tried pulling herself up, but it was no use. She could hear the wood cracking from the pressure. "Help!" Alex screamed. "Somebody help me!" She didn't know who she was yelling to. As far as she knew, she was all alone in the mountains, and she was about to fall to her death. No, Alex said to herself. "It can't end like this. It can't end like this." She struggled herself to pull herself up again. Another low crack sounded, and she slipped further through the bridge and toward the rocky ground below. Alex felt two hands grab hers just as the nick of time. She looked up and saw a very familiar face looking down at her. At first, she thought it was her dad, but then it realized it was Connor. It was a strange moment to notice how much he had grown up. His face turned bright red, and he struggled to pull his sister with all of his might. "Now, Lester, pull us up, buddy," he groaned. he grunted. Connor and Alex were slowly dragged upward. Once Alex was above the bridge again, she could see Lester's bill tightly clutched Connor's pants, dragging him up while he dragged her. The giant goose pulled them across the bridge until they were safely on solid ground again. The twins and Lester stayed on the ground until they all caught their breath. I hate you so much right now, Connor said between heavy pants. That's funny because I never loved you more, Alex said with a big smile and rolled over and gave her brother a big hug. Thank you, I owe you one. Luckily, with the amount of trouble we get ourselves into, I know you'll have a chance to make it up to me, he said. Lester squatted at him as if to say, Don't worry about me, I'm fine. She owes you one too, Lester, don't worry, Connor said. The twins stood up and brushed themselves off. They were covered in splinters and chips of rotting wood. Lester got to his feet too and stretched out his neck and bill. How did you know where I was? Alex said. Lucky guess, Connor said. You can't even run away like a normal teenager. You're supposed to even know. There was only one place I figured you were going. Lester and I had been flying around looking for you all day when we finally spotted your bike down the road. Does Mother Goose know where I am? Alex said. I've been covering for you since I realized you were gone. I told Mother Goose you were sick and vomiting all over your room. Then when she wasn't looking, I hijacked her goose and came looking for you, Connor said. How did you manage that one? Well, apparently he feels taken for granted and thought by helping me it would teach Mother Goose a lesson, Connor said. I don't speak goose or anything, but I'm guessing that's the gist of it, right, boy? Connor turned to Lester and the giant goose nodded. Why didn't you take me with you, Connor said, he said angrily. How could you leave me locked up at home? Are you trying to do things solo now or something? Not cool, Alex. Alex lowered her head shamefully. Because Grandma's going to be so mad enough at me when she finds out I took off. I didn't want to drag you into it, she said, and I found out who has Mom. I pried her out of Mother Goose. So that's why you took off so abruptly, Connor said. Well, who has her? What did you learn? Alex now understood why her grandmother kept information from them. She felt horrible knowing she was about to make her brother as stressed as she was. Apparently, the Enchantress is back, Alex told them. The Enchantress who cursed Sleeping Beauty is terrorizing the fairy tale world again, and she has Mom. What? He said in disbelief. What does the Enchantress want with Mom? I don't know, Alex said. I've been trying to figure it out, and I can't think of anything. Wait, I thought the Enchantress was dead, Connor said. The Evil Queen told us that she poisoned her and she ran off and died, remember? I guess she was wrong, Alex said. Ismia is her name, and she's very much alive. And that's why we haven't seen Grandma in so long, Connor said. I suppose, Alex said. Connor paced around the mountain road, thinking. We gotta get into the fairy tale world, Connor said. We have to save Mom. I agree, but we have to... But where are we going? What are we going to do when we get there? What can we do to save her that the fairies can't? Alex asked. We might not be able to do anything, Connor said. But 2 more people trying couldn't hurt. Besides, it sure beats sitting around and waiting for bad news. A small smile appeared on Alex's face. She couldn't have agreed more. Let's try to get to Grandma's cottage before sundown, Alex said. Do you know where we are? Are we even close? Connor looked around the mountains surrounding them. Yeah, we're close, he said, pointing flat mountain peak in the distance. Grandma's cottage is just on the other side of the mountain peak. I remember seeing it when we were little, hoping it was a volcano. Are you sure? Alex said. Positive, Connor said. Let's go. Lester, can you take us in the direction of that mountain peak? Lester cocked his head in the direction Connor pointed, let out an exaggerated laugh, and then Saya nodded. Connor climbed to Lester's back, then offered his hand to Alex. Climb aboard, he said. Alex hesitated. Are you sure this is safe? She asked. Lester squawked, rather insulted. You gotta try this, Alex, Connor said enthusiastically. I don't understand why OMG travels this way. OMG, Alex says. Old Mother Goose, Connor said. It's my nickname for her. She calls me Sea Dog. Alex shrugged and took his hand. He swung a leg over the large goose and held tightly to her brother's waist. Connor gripped the reins, ready for liftoff. Let's fly, Lester, he said. Lester spread his wings. His wingspan was much more impressive in the daylight. He took a few steps back and then bolted into a fast waddle forward. flapping his wings as he went, and they rose higher and higher into the air. Connor was right. It was an incredible experience. The mountains seemed much more majestic from a bird's perspective. The twins had never felt so free in their lives. I hope no one sees us, Alex says, fearfully looking down at all the roads and tiny towns underneath them. I just hope this isn't goose hunting season, Connor said. Lester squawked and looked back at him, terrified. I'm just kidding, Lester, Connor said. Relax before you lay an egg. Lester headed in the direction of the peak. A few moments later, they were flying over it. Connor was a little disappointed to see it was in fact a flat mountaintop and there were no signs of molten lava inside it. Keep an eye out for the cottage, he told his sister. It should be coming up at any moment now. Alex scanned the ground below. It was hard to see anything but treetops and occasional chimney. She saw a familiar ridge and her eyes followed the winding road that crossed over and through the woods ahead. At the very end of the road, she could make out the roof of a storybook cottage. I see it, Alex said and pointed to it. It's Grandma's cottage. Lester landed in front of the cottage just as the sun began to set. Alex Connor climbed off the goose and observed their grandmother's old home. Whoa, Connor said. It's definitely not the same condition we left it in, Alex said. It was obvious that no one had lived in the cottage for a long time. The front lawn was practically dead and overgrown in some places. The floor beds were full of weeds and blades of grass were almost as tall as the twins. Ivy grew up the side of the cottage and part of the roof had caved in. Their grandmother's blue car was parked outside but it hadn't been driven in years. A layer of dirt covered it and a city of spider webs had spun between the tires. Although the cottage was used mostly as a prop since their grandmother only lived here when the twins visited, it still was the location of the twins' happiest childhood memories. They were sad to see how abandoned it was. Alex and Connor approached the front door apprehensively. Lester, bon appetit, Connor said and gestured to the overgrown grass. Lester squawked and happily went to town on it. Do you think it's locked? Alex said. Connor twisted the handle and the door creaked open, answering her question. The twins stepped inside and surveyed the interior. It was exactly how they remembered it, except dusty and covered in cobwebs. Grandma's rocking chair was still by the fireplace and faced a large rug the twins used to lie in when she read to them. It's so strange to see everything again, Alex said. Grandma's chair, the fireplace, the kitchen table. I almost can't believe it's been here this whole time. Do you remember the forts we used to build with Dad under that thing? Connor asked, pointing to the table. How could I forget? Alex said. You always tried keeping me out of it, but Dad never let you. You know what's funny? Connor said as he walked around. Even though we know now that Grandma has never actually lived here, whenever I picture Grandma, I always imagine her in this place, baking cookies or reading by the fireplace. Me too, Alex said. Most of our childhood was a front, but it was a happy front. You think we'll find something that can take us to the fairy tale world in here? Connor asked. We have to, Alex said simply, but she hadn't heard else. She wasn't sure where she was searching for, but she knew she'd know what it was soon as she saw it. Connor looked at the dusty frames on top of the fireplace mantel. They were mostly pictures of him and his sister at the birthday parties and holidays with their family. In one picture, the twins were 3 years old and sitting on Santa's lap. Connor was very chubby and had a big grin on his face. Alex was crying hysterically. Check out this picture of us with Santa, Connor laughed. He looked like he was about to eat you. I was preparing myself for the other fictional characters that did try to eat us, Alex said. Connor snickered and picked up another phone. No way. Look how young Mom and Dad look in this photo. I don't think we're even born yet. Alex walked over and looked at it herself. Connor, you look just like them, she said. There's no denying that they're our parents. You're right, Connor said. I came up with a whole adoption theory when I found out we were part fairy, but looking at this picture kind of tosses that out the window. Alex went back to searching, confident something would pop out at any moment. Have you found anything that seems portal-worthy? Connor asked her. Not yet, Alex said. Well, except maybe this. Alex was staring up at a beautiful painting on the wall. She remembered it from when she was little, and unlike the rest of the cottage, the painting had remained just as vibrant. It was a watercolor painting of a pond, and it had beautiful shades of greens and blues. There was something about it that seemed so more familiar now as it had ever been. You think the painting could take us to the land of stories, kind of asked? It worked in one of the Narnia books, Alex said. She stepped closer to the painting and placed a hand on its frame. It's the Ugly Duckling Pond, Alex said, recognizing me. This is it. This has to be our way in. Why else would Grandma hang a picture of a pond in her cottage? You think you can get it to work, Connor said. I could try, Alex said. She placed both her hands in the golden frame and tried to will it to life. Nothing happened. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath, willing it even harder. Still, nothing happened. Connor clapped his hands loudly, breaking his sister's concentration. Clap on, he said. What are you doing, Alex asked him. Just thinking of other ways to turn it on, he said. Is there a remote control or an on switch somewhere? Maybe it's like a plasma screen. Alex ignored him and went back to focusing. She imagined all the places and people she had met during her first visit. She imagined all the castles and forests she and her brother had seen. She imagined all the dangerous animals and creatures they had encountered, but mostly she loved how desperate she wanted to see them again. Alex thought of her grandmother, her father, and her mother. She thought of the pond in the painting, the lily pads, the fireflies, and its water. To the twins' amazement, the painting began to glow. You did it, Connor said and hugged his sisters. You set it off. I did? Alex asked. It was almost too good to be true. I did it. The twins jumped up and down with excitement, but their excitement quickly faded to fear. The painting began glowing brighter and brighter, and the cottage began to rattle. It felt like the large train was passing directly below them. Exactly how did the Narnia kid travel through the painting, Connor asked, slowly stepping away from theirs. Uh-oh. The cottage stopped shaking and paint dimmed. Only now the painting pond was gone. The canvas was completely blank. Huh, Alex said. That's strange. A bit of relief, though, Connor said. I was worried for a second that the water was going to spill on top of the crash. A tidal wave of water crashed through the windows by the front door. The twins screamed and ran to the back of the cottage. Crash! Another tidal wave came rushing from the back. Crash! Water was gushing through every door and window and flooding the cottage. What's going on, Connor yelled. Did we hit an iceberg? He described it perfectly. It felt like they were sinking and sinking fast. They were already waist deep in water. The twins looked under in horror as their grandmother's former home was destroyed. What have we done? Alex shouted. I've always wanted a pool, but this is ridiculous, Connor yelled. The water poured into the house faster and faster. The twins couldn't keep their feet on the floor anymore. They treaded the water as it lifted them toward the ceiling. We gotta swim out of here or we'll drown, Connor said. Follow me. He took a deep breath and dove underwater. Alex was quick to follow him. They swam across the cottage to the front door. It was extremely strong current coming through the door, so the twins had to grab hold of anything they could force themselves against it. They pulled themselves past the door and discovered the cottage was no longer in the mountains, but in a large, murky body of water. It sank below them, disappearing in the dark, watery depths. The twins grabbed hold of each other and swam as hard as they could to the surface, praying there would be a surface. Finally, they saw a distorted light sky above them. It was the surface. The twins surfaced in the mysterious waters, gasping for air. The air was freezing against their faces. What was that all about? Connor yelled. Alex wasn't paying attention to him. She saw large trees in distance, with giant roots that sank into the ground. Fireflies filled the air and lily pads floated on the water around them. She knew exactly where they were. Connor, Alex said and excitedly splashed to her brother. We're in the Ugly Duckling Pond. We're here. We're back in the land of stories. That is the end of that chapter. I hope you enjoyed the reading. Don't forget to subscribe if you want to hear more from the Land of Stories, The Enchantress Returns, or if you want to hear more books in the future. And for those future books, I want you to make sure to comment in the videos below and give me any recommendations you want me to hear. And I hope you enjoy the reading. Bye.